Hey everybody, Hermes of Reason here. Welcome back. So I forgot to say a couple important things. First thing is that book that I held up. I don't have it around me now, but of Popper's is called Conjectures and Refutations, and that is the three-word summary of his thesis in some sense. Conjectures meaning the guesses that we make about what's really there, and then criticisms as in other ideas that might contradict that, evidence that would contradict that guess, and stuff like that. And so Popper's point is that we make guesses and then we criticize those guesses and then try to make better guesses based on those criticisms. And in effect, all guesses are critiques in an ongoing discussion. So in a sense, like, each guess is itself a criticism. It's a criticism against a worse guess. And this picture that Popper paints here is that of, like I was saying, an ongoing discussion. And like I was saying in the first video, that traditional forms of common sense and knowledge view knowledge as a thing that needs to be entrenched. But if it's seen as not a foundationalist thing, not an entrenchment thing, but rather an ongoing discussion, that keeps the growth of knowledge open-ended and doesn't entrench anything, as I was hitting very hard in that first video as a big problem with traditional views of knowledge. And so another thing that I wanted to say here is that so about the Hume's problem of induction, the white swans, just gathering data about the swans there, coming up with a theory from that data, and then saying that it explains swan phenomenon everywhere, when in fact there are black swans elsewhere and in Australia and stuff like that. This view that we get knowledge from repeated experience is called induction. Induction is you might say, an offshoot of empiricism. So empiricism, like I was saying, was the idea that our experience of the world is direct. And induction is like, well, given these direct observations of repeated experience, that must tell us something about the world. But really, it tells us nothing about anything except just those experiences. And this is another thing that that David Deutsch talks about in the first chapter of his book, The Beginning of Infinity, which I do want to cover a lot of that book in future videos. The thing that he says is that it's a total non sequitur to even think that you can get observations, repeat them, and then somehow that makes a theory. Popper's point here is that all observations are theory-laden to begin with. That theories always come before observations. There's always an interpretation of what we see before we say what's there, or we guess. Another thing about traditional views of common sense, namely that knowledge comes in to our brains, and we fill up our buckets, as it were. But what really happens is we create or recreate ideas which correspond to real things in reality, which we never know directly. We recreate all of our ideas, or all ideas are recreations by us, and that kind of thing. So all knowledge comes from within. It's conjectural, and then it's followed by criticism in order for it to grow. And criticism takes the form of other conjectures and testing against reality and that type of thing. So as I was saying before, though, Popper really kind of honed in on what this says about science and the true nature of science. And, he did discover, I think, the true nature of science. Pretty much everybody is wrong about it. And, they don't know really what Popper discovered there. And so they'll continue being wrong until further notice. So I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and they were asking a really good question, and I wanted to cover it in this video a little bit. What my answer is that Namely, I was telling them about, you know, this philosophy of problem solving, and they brought up how maybe we don't even need the concept of truth in this concept of problem solving, because really all you have is their problems and their solutions. Why do you need truth? And this was a good question, I thought, because in a way I was like, oh wow, I should know the answer to this. Truth is pretty important. And then in another sense, I was like, wait, I mean, maybe we don't need truth. Maybe we just need problems and their solutions and that kind of thing, and knowing when we're mistaken. And so this came from me kind of bringing up the difference between Popper's theory of knowledge and other ones, namely that other theories of knowledge try to arrive at the truth, and Popper's explicitly gets nearer to the truth, never arriving. And so to reconcile that arriving versus nearer to dichotomy with problem solving, it's important to connect, you know, problem solving with some regulative concept, perhaps, of truth. And so I think that the answer to this question is that although we never know truth, we do know our mistakes when we make them. And implied in our mistakes is the concept of truth. That to be mistaken at all means that there's something to be right about. And although we never get that right, absolute knowledge about reality, which exists, it is implied in our mistakes when we discover those, and in our endeavor to correct them. So yes, Popper's theory of knowledge, needless to say, is a realist theory. In general, the philosophy is realist. Anti-realism sort of prevails today. Popper is even accused of being sort of an anti-realist, or having ideas which lead to anti-realist implications, and I think it's because people don't understand this connection, perhaps, between problem solving and truth, and why truth is still relevant in that sense. So yeah, that's just some clarification on the last video, and I will continue to clarify this philosophy in future videos, so I look forward to doing that, and I'll speak to you next time. All right, take care.